Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel. I'm naturopathic Dr. Fiona Chin, co-author of the Kidney Disease Solution and formulator at Kygenesis. And I'm joined again today by one of my favorite guests, Nicole Williams, who joins us from Kidney Nutritional Institute. Nicole is she's so many things, but she's got her life coaching qualifications, but she's worked in the public health system in supportive roles and helping patients navigate that system through public health, which just gives her a world and wealth of information when it comes to managing chronic disease and how to not only navigate the system, but how to navigate emotionally through that when you've been diagnosed with something deemed incurable and chronic like kidney disease. So Nicole, thank you for joining me again. I always love our chats and get so much out of it, and I think our listeners do too.
Great. Yeah, I love being here and talking with you.
Oh, I love it and appreciate it. So we wanted to do a little bit of a 4-part series just about planting some seeds of how to work through the things that you see most commonly when it comes to being diagnosed with a chronic health condition, and then the things that you see implemented by patients and clients of how they really can navigate and move their way through emotionally through this diagnosis. So today we were going to talk about really what is positive thinking, what that looks like, some great tools, and just really maybe rewording or giving a new context to what that actually looks like and how you can practically implement that in your life to navigate that. Because I'll start by saying, I know when people get a diagnosis, and, again, I've mentioned it's something I've been through, and then people say, think positive, and you just want to go. So first off, let's talk about what is positive thinking and what is it not?
Yes. Yeah. Right. I love that introduction and starting point. I would like to kind of coin this series of sessions that we'll do as planting positive mental seeds is what came to mind for me. I want to really start off by clarifying that I am not referring to what we just noted, which was toxic positivity, which is the idea that, and it's really the belief that no matter what, no matter how dire or difficult your situation is, that you better maintain that positive attitude, right? It's just look on the bright side, good vibes only, which we see everywhere in our culture. But really the core of toxic positivity and the reason it can be so damaging is because it rejects this idea that you have difficult emotions, that you have moments that are really hard, or that it is suggesting that you put kind of on a false facade for others, when that's not truly how you feel. I was reading earlier this week as I was preparing, and there's an author and a great researcher who I love to kind of follow in her work, Dr. Susan David. She has written the book Emotional Agility, which is a really great read. But she says that we have a culture that prizes positivity over emotional truth. I thought, wow, is that
so true?
So true. So I want to first clarify for everyone listening that as I share and talk about planting these positive mental seeds and how they can support you, I'm not suggesting that. What I am referring to, and as a coach, I fully embrace and advocate for individuals to take time to process their emotions, take time to process those difficult moments, those really strong moments where you literally just want to stay in the bed and cry, right? Mm-hmm. Those are happening for a reason. Those are showing up for a reason. And my job as a coach, I see one of the things is to encourage clients to understand themselves better as they're going through those difficult emotions, but really it's more about not just managing it, but knowing that it's okay not to be okay. Mm-hmm. It's also important, again, to understand what those emotions are telling us and to really view them as data and pay attention to them rather than trying to hide from them or push them away.
Yeah. I think that I really like and this is what I do with myself, using it as data, because I'm like, okay, I'm feeling a certain way because I'm having a certain amount of thoughts around something that may or may not happen. So let's really dig under and investigate that, because that's where the learning and the power is. And can I change the narrative around that? Is it changeable, or do I need to sit in the emotion a little bit longer and really lean into that and actually see what it is actually trying to tell me? So especially when I have a negative emotion about my health or something like that, I'm like, okay, well, that's just something that I don't want to happen. That's the feedback. I don't want that to happen. That's why it causes me so much stress. Okay, that's great. That's just a feedback. It doesn't mean anything more than that.
Yes, exactly. And let's not pretend that that's always easy.
Oh, it is not always easy. No. Very good point.
I'd also, when I think about planting positive mental seeds, it's also about building that awareness, right? Of what you just mentioned, those awareness around our thoughts. And there are some common thinking patterns that we often fall into that can begin to halt your process or halt your movement towards goals, or beginning to feel better, do better, change your habits around how you're feeling. And when we have a better understanding or an awareness of those thought patterns, it alleviates some of the stress that's already there, right? We're already at a certain stress level. And so falling into these common thinking patterns, and I'll explain a little more in a second, it's piling on top of what we're already feeling, which is can be really difficult.
Yeah, over threshold, I call it. It's just over the ability to just emotionally regulate. I know it's a term they use in dog training all the time, but yeah, I've gone over threshold and I can no longer emotionally regulate. So
yeah, completely. I always say this, and I probably have already said this on here, but I am really surprised as I began to dig in this work for myself first and helping clients, how automatic our thoughts happen and produce an action, like without even noticing.
It's kind of crazy, isn't it? Yeah. And unless you've got that ability to be self-aware, which we're not taught to do that. I've spent 8 years of meditation, and so I have it, but my refractory period can be 2 days before I go, oh, it was a thought that elicited an emotion, and it was just a thought. There's no truth to it. And I went down this great big rabbit hole. Like,
yes.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
It really is. And even to notice a thought that immediately evokes an emotional response in our body, right? I think I like to use my kids as examples sometimes, because I'm a mom, and we can think of one sad moment that our child, my son walks home from the bus stop, right? Something happened to him as he's walking home, right? That thought enters my mind, and I can run with it, and yeah, I'm crying. My chest is my heart's beating. My chest is starting to feel hot. Like it's amazing how interconnected. I'm amazed just how interconnected everything is for our bodies, our mind, our heart, and so just being aware of that simple fact for anyone is really eye-opening and can really change how you begin to respond to everyday stress.
Yeah. And I think, to your point, what I'm hearing you say, and tell me if I've got this wrong, is that when you have that awareness, your thoughts, you have the ability to break the habit of your thoughts causing an emotional reaction. And so it becomes, well, at least for me, is how I experience it. I go, a thought elicits an emotional reaction. Okay, then I can relook at the thought and go, okay, that thought elicited this emotion. It may be a good emotion, or it may be a negative one. Okay, so that is my feedback to go that thought correlates with something I don't want. This thought generates something I do want. And that it's nothing more than feedback, nothing more than a thought. So now I have the ability to move towards the one that generated the better emotion for me. And what do I need to do? That doesn't mean that it will happen that way. I might not be suddenly cured and all of those kind of things, but maybe for someone with kidney disease, if I get a little bit more kidney function or do this, it's like, well, what steps can I take that will elicit that versus feeling like it'll do something else? And it gives you just a little bit of a roadmap, maybe not even control, but maybe a roadmap and control back about what's going on for you.
Yes, that was summarized perfectly. That's exactly right. And it allows us the ability also to um, observe rather than labeling ourselves as.
Very
Um,
nice. Yeah.
yeah, it allows that opportunity. What also happens that we may not always recognize is when we notice what thought is leading to that emotion, it gives us a chance to be more expansive about how we want to handle it,
Mm.
right? Because that negative emotion, it's gonna take a nosedive quick. It's gonna paint a doomsday picture. It's going to, fall into the trap of I'm helpless, this is hopeless, and it spirals very, very quickly. And so when we are aware of those thoughts and we build greater capacity to recognize that kind of sequence that roadmap that you summarized, it allows us to then not just decide, but we automatically are more creative or more open to different solutions,
Mm.
because that sense of hopelessness and that nosedive you take is no longer there, right? So then your brain it falls into like this sort of solution oriented space where you're like, wait a minute, I have kidney disease. What else is out there? My nephrologist or my primary care is giving me this information, and that's helpful. What else is out there that I can support myself with? And that's
Yeah.
when yes.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And from a neuroscience point of view, that is moving, and you understand this better than me, from the reptilian fight or flight brain up into the prefrontal cortex, which is where we have the ability to have imagination and create, not out of survival, but you can't, when you're in fight or flight, you revert back to that reptilian fight or flight brain, and you cannot think creatively. So you are always thinking in a state of stress. And it's that exactly what you said, being able to set that pattern, to have the ability to think creatively outside your problem. But unless you make that break, you actually can't see problems because you're not using your prefrontal cortex to do it. It's so fascinating.
Exactly. It's completely fascinating. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And every part has its moments and its functions, right? But when we are in a chronic state of stress, again, someone being diagnosed with chronic kidney disease or kidney disease, PKD as well, that's going to put you in a certain state of heightened emotion and stress to begin with. So how can we be aware of that, and what are some of those common thinking patterns that we fall into?
Well, let's dive into that. What are the common thinking patterns that you see people drop and fall into, specifically to a diagnosis of chronic disease? Because I'm guessing those thinking patterns are different from, say, another sort of scenario, right? Or are they not? Are we diving into
So I wouldn't necessarily say they're different per se, but I would say some of the examples and how these thinking patterns show up for clients with kidney disease, there are some slight nuances to how they would process them. So the first one that I have here is all or nothing thinking. So it's very black and white. If it isn't perfect, it's all negative. I see that particularly when a client at K&I is being asked to change their diet.
Right.
That immediately comes up. And all or nothing thinking is also root. There's some kind of roots of perfectionism, needing to be very stringent and perfect in measuring their food, and making sure they hit all of kind of the categories that the dietitians and others are recommending for them. And while that's there, what I like to help clients see is that you are approaching this from a place of commitment, from a place of wanting to do this with excellence, but don't allow yourself to fall into that place of perfectionism or just this kind of very black and white area of thinking about your approach.
You set yourself up for failure with that in some ways, don't you? Is how
I
I,
do.
yeah, that's what I'm hearing. I'm like, because if you don't, and do you find people that, I'm just running my train of thought, but people that follow that type of thinking are more likely to sabotage because then it's like, well, I'm no use, I'm useless at it, I failed at it, so there's just no point in doing it whatsoever, right? Because they don't give themselves that flexibility. Is that something you see?
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly what happens.
I can see how you would get to that place. So it's just
Mhm.
allowing flexibility in your thinking. Okay. So
Mhm.
that's one. What else what other patterns are you seeing?
Jumping to conclusions. So this looks like mind reading, thinking someone else believes negative things about you, or someone is they don't really know the truth, and so you then you can become a mind reader. The other is fortune telling, thinking that things will turn out badly no matter what.
Yeah, my favorite.
Um, One example that came to mind for that particular thinking pattern is this idea of when we have these support groups, whether it be something you find on Google, or there are some other great support groups through Facebook, and we have a few ourselves. What I find though is when someone is newly diagnosed or struggling with at a point in their diagnosis, is they'll go into the groups and they'll go down this rabbit hole, reading comments, learning about someone else's experience. And you really can fall again into that pattern of fortune telling for yourself based on someone else's experience. So
Mm.
there are moments when those groups are supportive, and that's what they're meant to do. But it becomes really easy to scroll for hours, read a ton of stories, and not really walk away with finding something that is supportive for yourself per se, but you're
Mm.
taking in all of that information, and I think it can really, in some instances, not be so helpful.
Yeah, I see that a lot in the MS community as well. When people are online sharing their stories, people think that's the only story. And especially if they identify or the story that they're reading plays into maybe their fortune telling, as you said. And so it strengthens a already story that they may have had. So see, this is what happened to this person. So this will definitely happen to me kind of thing. So
Right. Right. The other thing that came to mind too for me is thinking about or noticing the time of day that you're doing kind of this scrolling or looking through some of these groups. I imagine if you're in bed getting ready for sleep and you have your phone and you're scrolling, you're really activating your brain.
mm,
So that isn't probably the best thing to do right before you're expecting yourself to kind of relax and sleep, because I
yes.
hear a lot about challenges with sleep in this community as well. So just one really quick example that came to mind as I was thinking about that.
Yeah, that makes total sense. All right. What other sort of thinking patterns are you noticing in?
So emotional reasoning, you think that your feelings are your reality. Um, I
Good
feel
one.
this is one example, I feel angry, so that means I'm being treated poorly.
Yeah, wow. How many people do that? That's such a common one, isn't it?
It really is.
I feel this must be my reality rather than questioning it. Yeah.
Mhm.
I never thought about that one before. What do you see specifically in the kidney world with that as an example?
I think what comes to mind, it's more related to the client's interactions with their providers.
Mm.
There's a lot of frustrations, and I don't, I want to say mistrust, but I think the challenge is that this idea of feeling collaborative with their provider in terms of their treatment is not always there. And so there's
Mm.
a lot of fear, frustration, certainly anger. And
Mhm.
the thought then comes to, I'm not being treated appropriately, or they're not listening, or, the tends to, I overly identify sometimes with that experience.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Are there any more major patterns that you're seeing?
You'll like this, Fiona. Should statements.
Ooh,
Are you shoulding yourself to?
I like it. I'm sure this is one of my patterns, I suspect. Yes. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. Yeah.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Yeah. Um, so telling yourself that things must be the way you hoped for or thought they would be. Should statements tend to lead to a lot of guilt, a lot of shame. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big one, I think, for a lot of people, whether big
I'm
one.
pretty sure that's my default pattern. I think about it. You shouldn't do this, and you shouldn't be sick. And you're in. I can identify that one.
And the last one I have here is about labeling, which we kind of reference at the top of our chat. So it's similar to all or nothing thinking, but it's the idea that you kind of label yourself based on how you're feeling. If you made a mistake, you might attach the label like I'm a horrible person, or I don't want to say loser, but it tends to precipitate into over characterizing yourself as something worse when it was maybe just a mistake.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of people do really hang. I've got a really good friend that does that. So this happened, so I'm no good, or I'm useless or something. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. All right.
Yeah. Kind of tying our self-worth to those statements. Yeah.
So when people, sorry, I interrupt you, but I was going to say, when people can identify with those, is it just a matter of going, oh, I do that, and becoming more aware of it? Or how do people break out of a default common thinking pattern?
Yeah.
Or just pattern?
So the first thing is definitely being aware, right? You can't change what you're not aware of. And then it starts with immediately having some compassion for yourself in that moment. So, and that fits, all of these thinking patterns that I just briefly mentioned, because when you are either jumping to conclusions or you have very black and white thinking and you're aware of that, you then can ask yourself, okay, let me think of a quick example. I am preparing this meal and I may have added too many carbs, or I am having meat with this meal, even though my dietitian suggested I go, how do I feel about this in this moment? Am I giving myself compassion and permission to maybe make a mistake, maybe have a little bit of meat, maybe be more flexible with my approach and how I'm just approaching that moment. The other part of these patterns is that I think it tends to be also difficult for individuals to stay in the moment, because we then start to over dramatize what could happen in the future. So if we make a mistake with our eating on a Tuesday, then I'm not going to do well at all for the rest of the week. Or, if the should statement, I should get up and work out. And if I don't do it on Monday morning, then forget it. I'm not doing it for the rest of the week. And so it becomes this way of setting us up really inaccurately for what we can really progress and do. So that awareness is the biggest key. And then stepping into kind of a self-compassion for yourself would be the next start of the process of changing those thoughts.
Amazing. Okay. So what are the benefits of, we'll call it true positive thinking, not the toxicity form of it, but because I think because people get confused about this toxic positive thinking and what actually thinking positive in the way that you described it looks like, what are the benefits of it, and what are strategies that people can do to sort of start to shift into that mindset of maybe moving more towards that and practicing some of the stuff that you've spoken about?
The first benefit is that you are going to be building your resiliency, your ability to handle stressful situations and process your emotions appropriately. There has been also a lot of research around how when we activate those positive centers in our brain, that it actually can help with our immunity.
I've
And
seen the same
so,
stuff.
which is amazing, right? And then the third area that comes to mind is just simple stress reduction. I think coming back to that idea of recognizing how detrimental that chronic stress cycle can have on our body, and what can we do to continue to reduce that stress.
Mhm.
Um, I am going to suggest a very common practice, which is a gratitude journal.
My one of my favorite things to do. I do it every night. Sometimes I actually think morning might be better, but yeah, it's how I end my day. Before I do that, I meditate, go to sleep. That's
Mhm.
my closing day every day.
And to expand on that just a bit, is also making note or listing out what you're grateful for in terms of what your body can do, right? As small as the ability to take a long walk,
Mm-hmm.
the ability to see your grandchildren or to see your family members and hear their laughter and smell the food that you're cooking. So what are the ways in which you are loving your body and what it is doing to support you as an individual?
Yeah, I love that. And there's so much research that points towards gratitude being such a game changer when it comes to biochemistry in our body, amongst all the other things that it does as well. So yeah, and it's such a simple thing to do.
Very simple. Yep.
Do you find too that, and I do it, and it's taken a little while to get good at this, but I then try and elicit. So I write it down sometimes. I'm grateful this, grateful that. But when I do it really properly, I can really get into that. And I'm like, well, I really am grateful for this. And I really am grateful for that. And I mean, I know, Kelly Welsh. I spoke to her in a podcast the other day, and we were talking about her diagnosis of polycystic, and she's just like, I'm so grateful. And she's, waiting for a transplant and stuff, but she's really gotten to that place of feeling true gratitude. And most people say, well, that is impossible. You're waiting for a transplant, but no, it really is. So walk me through a little bit more about that, about eliciting that emotion and how you feel it and how you move into it to really make that practice super powerful.
Yeah. So one of the most important things as you're thinking about that and listing out what you're grateful for is to get very specific and sometimes really granular. So it could be something like, and using myself as an example again, I'm so grateful for this like amazing deep conversation I had with my daughter in the car coming from school.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm so grateful for even someone helping you throughout the day. Finding those really small, very specific things that happen during that day and that time, and getting, that is really the key. I think that that's really important because it then allows you'll find that you will begin to look for those small moments.
And isn't it funny? I love the word extraordinary because it's extraordinary, and you stick them together. And I'm always fascinated by root words and where they come from. And to your point, is the extraordinary is found in the extraordinary moments. That's where the gratitude. It's not, oh, I won taps lotto, I'm so grateful. It's exactly as you said. It's the conversation I had with my daughter where she really opened up to me, and she was just so vulnerable and trusted me with something that no one else does. How amazing is that? Or
Amazing.
like that is, and it is amazing, and that is where all. And I think we lose sight of that as a society. And I think, I'm going to blame social media as part of this, when you're looking at people driving these fancy cars and this and that, and we're looking for all this stuff outside of ourselves. But the real gratitude, and that, like you say, it comes from these really small, specific moments to you. And a lot of us miss them because we're so busy being distracted.
Exactly. And I think too, particularly for someone who might be facing a really difficult moment throughout their journey and their diagnosis, again, those those moments really can place a cloud over us. And you are being tasked with trying to still remember, just remember the core of who you are just as a person. And I think gratitude is one of those practices that can really ground you and get you back to that place of remembering that, yes, I may have kidney disease, I may have PKD, but gosh, I am this amazing dynamic person. I have, and it sort of brings you back to that place of just awe and wonder, and reminding you of what is truthful for you as an individual.
I'd never thought about it that way, but it's so true, because it brings you back to your essence of the ability that you have, because it's the smaller moments of how you experience your life that no one else has that. There's lots of people, well, not lots of people, but maybe there's lots of people winning Tats Lotto and should feel that. But how many people get to feel grateful about a really specific conversation with their daughter, which is the essence of who you are, which is what you're talking about, which I never thought of it that way, but that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay, so granular gratitude, Gigi.
I love that.
I love that too. Granular gratitude. I haven't ever, I think that's the best explanation I've heard of it. Why being so specific is so important. I can really feel that. If I'm thinking about examples for myself, I'm like, yeah, wow, that really does elicit the emotion quite quickly and easily, versus going, I'm so grateful for, I don't know, the nice car I drive or whatever it is, but yeah, when you go, well, I'm really grateful that I'm a good person, I had this amazing conversation, and it's very different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. And staying in that space of hope and possibility is again what allows us to be more creative, and allows us to be more expansive in terms of how we are feeling and approaching.
Amazing. Anything else you want to add about strategies and just the benefits of this kind of thinking?
I would say that, well, I think that it is something that I would describe it as a sorry, I'm trying to gather my thoughts a bit here.
No, it's all good. I can see you're going to set something brilliant out. No pressure.
I often think of planting these positive seeds as a way of finding our, this cozy nook or cozy corner that we can sort of curl up and be nurtured by. It's this ability to, again, once we're aware of some of those thinking patterns and we have that ability to practice that compassion and really process our emotions, what we're doing for ourselves far exceeds, and I want to say far exceeds, what the medical community can do. And I don't mean that in a as a knock to any medical professional, but what I'm trying to convey is that when we reciprocate that love and that hope for ourselves as an individual, it elevates so much more for us as people, and as someone who, again, there's sort of this what can probably feel like a big storm around you as you're dealing with a diagnosis, whether it be something that you have had for years or something that you were just diagnosed with. And so finding that space just to bring comfort to yourself in that time of need is sort of how I envision and think of it.
Yeah, I think you painted that picture perfectly. And it's so true, because again, we're very quick to give all our power, because I think it's such a stress that part of the fight or flight is the faint or freeze thing. And part of that freeze response is just to give all our power away to everybody else and let everyone else fix it. And what you're talking about are these strategies to bring you back into yourself and reconnect with yourself and build almost a better relationship with yourself, which is only going to have an amazing on-flow effect to everything in your life because you're practicing what you're talking about. So you probably choose to eat better and choose to have better thoughts and better relationships as just a side effect, and not that you consciously look for it, because you're building this better internal connection. So it can only have that. And in some ways, and what I've learned for myself is, you almost have to have that first to really implement some of the outside strategies that will help you. Because when you get this right, like you were talking about the diet changes and the fixed thinking, if you don't get that under control first, you're far more likely to sabotage or move into those thinking patterns that you're talking about. If you can do this, the on-flow effect on how you operate in your life is going to be more loving, compassionate, and caring. That can only elicit better health, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And to the point, why having someone like you and why addressing your mindset in any chronic disease, and it's definitely a core belief of mine, is so imperative to making fundamental, long-lasting changes.
Absolutely. It really, really, really is. And there's so much that we're processing. There's so much that we're thinking about and navigating and trying to understand. And so absolutely giving yourself that time. I think of it as almost as a gift that you're giving yourself to give yourself the time to understand what you're feeling, what's happening for you as an individual, but being able to walk away with a clear plan. I'm someone who really believes in helping clients establish a plan for themselves so they don't feel lost.
Yeah, no, I from all the podcasts we've done together, I know you would be a fabulous practitioner to work with. Not only are you emotionally intelligent and caring and empathetic, but you're practical. And I think that combination really empowers people, the ability to make positive changes because they feel empowered by you, plus they're given a plan. And I think that's important because I have done, lots of counseling stuff, and you don't always get that part as well. So I think that's really good that you do the two together.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Amazing, Nicole. This is great. Before I wrap up, was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, nothing comes to mind right now. This was a really, really good conversation.
It was great. And I'm so excited. So if you're listening to this and you feel like you've gotten a lot out of it, I know I do. I've had a couple of, you get things, but I've had a couple of quite somatic aha moments of, I really need to look at that. Nicole has been generous enough that we're going to do a series of these. So she'll join us again. I think it's in a week or two, and we're going to move on to the next part of this. And really what we're hoping to do, and why I have Nicole on here, is to really give you a little bit of Nicole, if you can't, manage to see her or finances or whatever that looks like, but to really give you some really good strategies that you can start putting some of this in your life. So GG is everybody's homework, granular gratitude.
Right.
Start with that and maybe come up with which thinking pattern you fall into and starting to bring some awareness around that, right? There's some great things that you can start with. So if you've enjoyed this, make sure you hit subscribe. That means you'll get notified when Nicole is on next, and you can listen to that. Make sure you hit like. That always helps our YouTube logarithm, so more people get to have Nicole and present this information. If you want to find out more about Nicole, head to kidneynutritionalinstitute.org, go to the staff, and then Nicole, she's right down the bottom there, but she's there with her beautiful straightened hair. You'll see a beautiful photo of her, and you can contact Kidney Nutrition Institute to be able to book a consult with her. Nicole works virtually, so no matter where in the world you are, if Nicole if you resonate with her, you're able to book a consult with her and connect in. And I know Nicole's got some exciting things coming up, so when she's ready, I'll start sharing more of her links down below. But I'll put a link to her profile on the page so you can click there. If you want to know more about what we do, head to www.kidneycoach.com. Join our Facebook page. It's just Facebook.com/kidneycoach. We're on there every day with really great information and research. Nicole, as always, you are a delight and such a bright light in our world. And I just love your empathy, practicality, very much how my brain works. So I think that's great. Thank you for being you and sharing your wisdom with us. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys, thanks for being part of our community. We hope you got a lot out of this. Go practice your GGs, and we'll see you next time. Bye.